who was a drunkard, constantly drunk. As a prisoner, you don't flush your own toilet. So it would have been the responsibility of a custody officer every 2 hours to flush the toilets. You can hear shouting, screaming, banging, door kicking, all sorts of noises. The volume level that this is set at isn't loud. But if you imagine 60 people all at the same time doing this, all wanting attention, the noise level would have been significantly high. Right, so this cell depicts how things have changed over the decades, because as we got into the 70s, 80s, 90s, we had things like medical facilities within the custody block. Now, this cell was not used as a medical facility, but we have taken equipment that was here when it closed to put it into this cell to depict the fact that nursing staff were on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because one of the things that we have to think about now is drug abuse, alcoholism, mental health. The picture on the storyboard behind you actually shows you a custody officer sitting outside on a chair. The cell door would be open, and the person who's being detained is on effectively something called suicide watch. And that is still something that happens today. So in the original equipment, that's the original bed that was in the medical facility when it closed. This is the medical secure medical cabinet for having things in it.
There's nothing in there. Oh, okay, there's nothing in there.
No. So it will all be secure by lock and key. And this is to have things like Narcan, which is a heroin antidote. So if somebody we believe is overdosed on heroin, we can give them an antidote to bring them back. And then behind the little box there, that is a secure syringe box. So that if you have a prisoner who's searched and then has syringes, they're secured within that so they cannot be used, and they cannot be used, more importantly, as a weapon.
That sign.
Oh, what about this?
The arrow on the ceiling, as you go in and out of the cells, you can see, actually points to Mecca.
Ah,
so
just like Qibla.
So Muslim detainees know which direction to face for prayers.
Yeah. Oh, to keep blood to it. Yeah.
It's interesting.
I'm going to stand this side because those spotlights are shining straight in my face. Now, this cell talks about capital punishment. What do we mean by capital punishment? Capital punishment refers to whatever the judge sentences you to, up to and including death by hanging. Let us assume that you are not going to be hung. Therefore, you may get something called 10 lashes of the birch.
So what is that? Or is it like...
What would happen, if I can swap places, what would happen is that you would be brought into a room with a stool like this, called a birching stool. You would be topless. You would be restrained across your shoulders, across your waist, and at the ankles. and then you would be given 10 lashes across your back. Those,
It's 10 of each.
no, 10 of one particular one, whichever is available, or depending on the severity of your crime. Bear in mind that when this was a punishment, you would not then be seeing a doctor afterwards. The skin on your back would be covered in lesions, left to self-heal.
Death mask. People have died. People have died.
Okay? This picture on this storyboard is actually part of a photograph and that is the main entrance, the old main entrance to Windsor Green Prison. It was I believe that was the last hanging at Windsor Green Prison. Going back in the early 1900s.
Yes, and wow, the last hanging, the actual last hanging there.
Only at Windsor Green, not necessarily the last hanging ever. Hanging was not abolished in the UK till 1964. If you had the bigger version of this picture, you would see here, there is an old car which belonged to a duchess, and I cannot remember her name. But she was an avid protester about capital punishment. She wanted it stopped. Prior to scenes like this, hangings were public events. You could go and watch someone being hung. If you are from Birmingham, you may know a pub called the Tyburn House. Tyburn House. It's on the Chester Road, travelling from city centre going out to Sutton Coldfield. That is where a lot of public hangings took place in Birmingham. Now, some of you may know the phrase, money for old rope. Do you know where that might come from? So, go back to the 1900s. The hangman gets paid for hanging a villain. Now let us suggest that the villain was guilty of a significant crime, such as a murder, a child murder for instance. So he gets paid to hang the villain. When the villain is dead, body retrieved, noose taken off, and cut into small pieces, and then sold as souvenirs. That's where the phrase money for old rope comes from. Most people don't. I didn't know it until I came here. It's
Yeah, so the rope, they were cutting.
becomes a souvenir.
Yeah, so. That's just not normal. That's not normal, is it really?
It's not now, but back in the early 1900s, it was.
So when they, obviously, say for example, someone was hung, so they've cut that rope up into little pieces, like a collect, like for the fat. Was it who bought that? Was it family? Or?
Just people who wanted a souvenir of that day, of that event. It didn't necessarily happen at every hanging.
Any people can see, so anyone can see that.
Yeah. It would not be uncommon for a significant hanging to have 500 to 1,000 people there. So, just to explain why we're standing in a stairwell, these originally would have been cells. In order to make the building compliant with today's requirements for disabled access, etc., etc., we have taken out 18 cells in total, that's 9 on each side of the building, to create 2 new stairwells. So the first thing you see, very dominant, are 2 old motorbikes. They are both original ex-West Midlands Police motorbikes. They will never run again because their engines are seized. But a fantastic piece of display equipment that is historical to the force.